Excellent. There we go. We are now live. Welcome everyone to today's webinar. Today's webinar is going to be about our, here we go, CNC machining program. My name is Megan Collins. I am a student recruitment coordinator here at NSCC. And joining me today, we have Patrick Snyder. Hello.
Hello, how are you doing today?
Good. Where are you coming from?
I'm currently in Kentville, where the current course is offered at the King's Tech campus here at NSCC. Um, we are just sorry. Um, I'm first year instructor for CNC machining, and I walked into the opportunity to help develop this course in its infancy. Um, I've got a lot of experience coming from industry of 17 years. Um, of industry experience after graduating, becoming a graduate myself from the NSCC Precision Machining and Manufacturing Engineering Technology program from a number of years ago.
Perfect. So how today's webinar is going to work, I'm going to do a little bit of housekeeping pieces before we get into things. But for the most part, Patrick is going to be sharing all of his information about his program and his experience. So first things first, I want to recognize that all of our campuses are in Mi'kmaq, the unceded territory and ancestral homeland of the Mi'kmaq Nation. Our relationship is based on a series of peace and friendship treaties between the Mi'kmaq Nation and the Crown dating back to 1725. As treaty beneficiaries, we recognize that we are all treaty people. In addition, I want to recognize African Nova Scotians. NSCC recognizes the African Nova Scotians as a distinct group who arrived here over 400 years ago. From that time on, they have contributed to the infrastructure and the economic wealth of the towns and cities they helped to build, but from which they could not benefit. Let us learn more about how respective communities were shaped by the historical contributions of the African Nova Scotians and the Mi'kmaq. Final piece is just a little bit about the platform that we are using today. We are using a platform called GoToWebinar. You should all have a panel on the side of your screen if you're joining us from a laptop or a desktop. If you're joining us from a mobile device, whether that's your phone or a tablet, it may just be integrated within your tablet or phone itself. But we've automatically muted your microphones and we've disabled your webcams. So if you are multitasking right now, maybe you're making yourself a little snack, you're doing some homework, you're commuting, whatever it might be, please don't worry that your microphone may accidentally turn on or your camera may accidentally turn on. Those have been automatically disabled. But we do welcome you to ask questions. You can ask questions using the questions tab on your screen. I'll be looking at those throughout the session and relaying them to Patrick as we go through. Some of you may have questions that are related to your personal application to NSCC. If your questions are more personal in nature, feel free to send us an email to recruitment@nscc.ca and we'll get back to those. Okay, so diving into things, NSCC, we stand for the Nova Scotia Community College. We have 14 campuses across the province, one of which is an e-campus. So you can't see that on your screen, but we're living in it virtually. This program in particular is currently offered at our King's Tech location, or King's Tech campus, which is in Kentville, Nova Scotia. If you've ever heard of the Valley, or you've heard of people talk about a region in Nova Scotia called the Valley, that's exactly where this program is located. So Patrick, can you talk to us a little bit about CNC machining? So what the heck is it? What does CNC stand for anyway?
So CNC is Computer Numerical Control, and it is an adaptation of old machining methods where it was manual machines. Traditional gear would have been a lathe and a mill, which you would operate with your hands. In 1952, MIT had developed some new machinery to help the military develop helicopter blades, and that was NC controls or computer numeric controls, which basically turned into what it is today, using letters and numbers in word formats to create a code that the machines follow and make complex geometries using the code. Now, traditional CNC machining would have been done with potentially hand coding. There would have been punch cards, kind of like picking up ones and zeros, kind of like the binary that computers are coded with these days. But instead of being card format, now we use software, complex software, to be able to control many axes at the same time, and also integrate a number of machines or robots together to create some automation as well.
Perfect. So this program is a one-year program, very quick, but it does need some certain admission requirements to get into the program, of course. The admission requirements for this program are rather unique. So completion of the one-year precision machining certificate or equivalent, so that could be equivalent credential from another institution, or completion of level 1 machinist apprenticeship, or completion of marine engineering technician trade through the Canadian Armed Forces. You may have noticed on that on the slide before this one, it's a one-year program, but you're earning a diploma. That's because you need that 1 year of previous experience or previous training to be admitted into the program. So Patrick, with this program having specific admission requirements, are there any other pieces that you'd recommend students have prior to being admitted? Are there any other skills that you think would benefit someone going into the program?
Having a hands-on aptitude is certainly desirable. The ability to kind of understand, forces and feeds, and understand, or having a good hands-on aptitude, I guess, is really the first one. But definitely the fundamentals coming from that first year program, that's typically going to be that's your typical route coming into this course, is having that first year of machining. The fundamentals you learn in that particular course are going to give you a feel and understanding of how the tools are going to react with some of the materials you're going to cut. You're going to understand some of the geometries of the tools being used. And a lot of what you learn from the manual side of things is going to apply to how well these tools cut in the CNC machines. It's kind of been not mandated, but a belief among the tradespeople in this trade that having these fundamental skills coming from the manual side of things is a huge help and huge assistance when it comes to getting into the CNC side and understanding how these tools are going to react with each other or react with the materials, or how to problem solve as well. Good problem solving ability is certainly an admirable quality to have. A bit of tenacity as well, because sometimes these problems might persist and it takes a bit of time to work through it. But problem solving skills is certainly another one.
Perfect. Patrick, can you walk us through some of the courses that students would be taking in this program?
Yeah, certainly. So the first one listed here is geometric dimensioning and tolerancing. And this is basically taking existing dimensions that we have or that would have been applied to drawings and tightening the tolerances a little further. GD&T was first introduced back during the Second World War, and that was to help mitigate some of the issues that were found among factories that were supplying parts for building of planes or tanks or other sort of mechanical war aiding devices. The ability to have parts come together in a manner that they're going to fit, this geometric dimension and tolerancing helps kind of standardize the manner in which these parts are going to be designed and designated in order to fit and have certain fits so that they do mesh together and work together. So you have parts coming from across the country and all coming together in a single factory, puts them together, and everything is going to work the way it's expected. So geometric dimension and tolerancing kind of gives you a good introduction into that, and it's not going to be full encompassing, but it gives you a chance to sort of get your toes wet and find out if that's there's some shops that are going to use it, some shops that aren't, and that might be a determining factor of whether you go somewhere or not, because it can seem a little complex at times, but there's certainly ways of learning this and simplifying it. Moving on in the list, looking at the CNC Machining Center and the CNC Turning Center, these are kind of the core parts of this course. You're going to get a lot of hands-on learning with these particular courses because these are focused around the machines. The hands-on with the machines, the ability to get in, get your hands dirty, learn what the machines can do, learn how the machine controls work, and getting comfortable with the machines is going to make you feel more comfortable when it comes time for you to do your work placement or get into the workforce. The ability to have the hands-on learning in this particular environment is absolutely, it's a massive advantage. Now, there's some theory that comes along with those two courses as well, because although you've learned potentially at another job or coming from the first year precision machining, there's a lot you would have learned coming into this prior, but there's more to learn as far as what codes these machines need to use, how these machines receive the codes, how they interpret and work together with different codes within the machine. You need to be able to turn spindles on, choose the direction of the spindle, make tool changes happen. You need to understand how the machine knows where the part is. So there's a lot that goes into the hands-on portion, but also there's some theory that comes along with it. Planning and inspection is a pretty short course overall, but the planning and inspection kind of gives you a taste of what some of industry is actually doing right now as far as getting into a lean sort of methodology. Being able to plan ahead, being able to have documentation to say what these jobs are and how they come together so that you can repeat the same job over and over again. Let's say it's 2 months down the road. It gives you a chance to collect that data, gives you a chance to improve upon it next time, and that gives the company you might be working for or your own company the ability to improve and make money and have continual improvement happen within the shop. The CAD CAM, that is going to be the software that's used for programming all these machines. So that's going to get you into learning what the different axes are, learning what the software is, how it works, creating simple geometry to start, and then eventually moving into some complex geometries that you're going to be able to make with a lathe that has live tooling, or the mill we have here now also has a new 5-axis attachment with it when we purchased the machine, which gets us into some pretty complex geometries, which is precisely why some of the CNC gear is relevant today to today's industry. Of the last course listed here is the CMM inspection and lean manufacturing. The CMM inspection, that is a machine. It's also I'm not sure it's considered truly a CNC machine. It doesn't use the same code, but it's a machine that is used for measuring parts after they come off of these machines, and it's very, very precise. We're talking like 5-6 decimal places of an inch, which is microscopic. It is capable of measuring these small, minute differences on parts, and that'll tell us the difference of potentially a part that's going to fail in an airplane or before it gets to the airplane. That's another machine that we're able to learn, get hands-on learning with, and teach the measuring methods. And then the lean manufacturing side of that is a smaller portion of that course, but again, that's about minimizing movements within a work environment, eliminating waste, and making the work environment as streamlined as possible to help everyone do their job better.
Excellent, thank you. So someone has just asked about the class schedule, which is perfect timing because it brings us to our next slide. There we go. I think it's so important that folks have an understanding of what their week or what their year is generally going to look like. So as you can see, students are in class Monday through Friday-ish. Fridays afternoons look like they're a little bit lighter. But this is in general what the schedule looks like right now. Now it is subject to change, but we typically recommend that students prepare for classes Monday through Friday, starting at about 8:30 until mid-afternoon. Anything to add to this, Patrick?
Excuse me, sorry. I guess the main takeaway is that you get shop time. Often it's in the morning, but that of course can depend on how many different classes we're sharing the space with, which typically isn't many. Um, but there's a high number of machines, high volume of machines to students, and that allows for a large amount of hands-on. When we look at the schedule, um, Fridays are typically a little lighter. Um, and then sometimes throughout the week, depending on the workload, if we can keep our lunch hours pretty short, um, and this all comes from a scheduling standpoint. If we can keep lunch hours short, that means for often a slightly earlier day than typical 4:30 workday, right?
Yeah. Now, would it be realistic for someone to work part-time or uh, be relatively simple to balance this program with a part-time job?
It certainly could. I've got a couple of students here who work part-time on weekends and sometimes on like a Friday afternoon um, at a machine shop. So they're able to get some hours in, and that helps them, with some part-time work. I get another fellow who works evenings at the ski hill down the road, and he's able to fit some time in there as well. So the schedule is consistent, which means that Monday to Friday is typically most weeks going to be the same. So it's reliable. You can come to an employer and say, here are the times I have available, and there's not much that's going to derail that schedule.
Yeah. How much time is spent working outside of the classroom? So let's say Monday, class is ending at 2:30. Would a student expect to have homework that evening?
Homework is pretty minimal overall, aside from some of the theory stuff. Um, we do have a couple of books where, with the GD&T, which happens in the first semester, there's some assignments there that are done from home. You're drawing parts, you're creating these drawings based on what the book might be asking you for. There can be a little bit of homework, but we're not talking like 3 hours a night or anything. It might be maybe 2 hours a week kind of thing. And there might be some studying you need to do depending on what your learning style is, as far as being able to be set or prepared for tests, which I wouldn't say every week, but maybe every 2 weeks you might have a test or quiz of some sort. And realistically, the time in and out of the shop versus the classroom, um, there's a lot of time spent in the shop. There's at least 50%, if not more, time spent in the shop, and that's really giving you the hands-on experience, getting the time in front of the machines. That is what's going to make students become, or give them the chance to become more comfortable on the machines. And the skills you learn on these machines are easily transferable to different brand machines that might be at other shops.
Yeah. Okay, so you're talking about shops. Hands-on learning. I see that you look like you're in a shop. Um,
Yes.
what does hands-on learning look like for this program? We're talking a lot about shop time. Um, what is that hands-on learning piece looking like in the CNC machining program?
Well, if it's all right, I might get up and go for a little stroll around and kind of show a few things off here if we can.
Yeah,
So
totally.
unplug my phone, and I'm going to just switch my camera around here. Oh, one moment, please. Sorry.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay.
There
So
we go. We can see.
um, this is a new milling machine we have. And being in the shop would mean getting time on this machine, getting a chance to get on the controller, learn what some of these controls do, the buttons, um, and being able to get in the machine and learn what the holding devices are. Like these devices here, that's our 5-axis portion. The other piece that we've acquired this year our through this new piece of equipment is learning some new technology. There's probing that we have that allows us to measure parts and pick up the position relatively easily. And there's also some new technology, this piece right here, that helps us touch tools off and is a time saver when it comes to setting the machine up. There's a bunch of different tools that go into the machines. Let me just come over here for a moment. So a lot of time is going to be spent learning what these tools and holders are. These tools are all going to go in the machine and all have a specific purpose. Like this is going to be for creating threads inside of a part. It's a tap. Then we have end mills like this that have flutes. These are used for cutting on the side of material that allows us to create the complex shapes that we have, or that we're going to be creating with the CNC programs. There's a couple of different parts that we just recently made we made through the year here. So this looks like, might be recognizable to some. It's a little clutch piece, and that came together through a couple different operations in a lathe and mill. We've got a V pulley here as well, which we use some live tooling for. This was a first semester project, which allowed the chance to do some drilling. There's some tapped holes in here as well. We've got threads inside these holes. And then this piece here is a ball in a box. This started off as a solid piece of material like this, and then that ball became free inside the box. And that's kind of to help demonstrate what sort of capabilities these machines have. Now, these three pieces here, these were just worked on today. It started off as raw stock like this. The first operation brought us to a point where it had these holes and pockets inside. And then that's the final piece right there. So that took a whole of two operations, and that used some of that new 5-axis technology we have. Oh, one moment here.
So neat.
I'm just gonna
I'm learning so much.
turn the camera. So being in the shop for us, being in the shop for us really means the opportunity to make parts and be on the machines and actually using the machines, and it's a true hands-on learning experience.
Yeah, and it seems like these are machines that you really can't learn how to use unless you practice on them.
Absolutely.
You can watch videos and read books, but until you actually do it, I'm not sure if that would even be possible.
It could be tough, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm sure this is very expensive equipment that you have behind you.
It is, yes. There's some behind me right now that somewhere is in the range of $160,000 maybe.
Wow.
For that one piece of gear. And then there's shops that have purchased stuff for well over into the millions of dollars for a single piece of machinery. So there's the tradespeople, or the people in the trade, the owners of shops, definitely are eager to hire people who have experience, who have the chance to learn from a program like this, because they don't want to just bring someone in off the street onto $1 million machine without any kind of training. And this kind of core training helps gain those sort of competencies that you need for understanding how the machine works and how to operate it.
Yeah, no kidding. I think it's great that our students get the experience on these machines before actually going into industry. So speaking of industry, work terms. Is a work term a requirement of this program?
It is a requirement, yes. The third semester or spring semester is about, I think, 5 weeks long, and that is entirely work term for my students. I think most of them have placements now or are almost set to choose a placement. Class size this year is pretty small. I only have 6 students. So right now that I have actually 7 machines. So that's greater than 1 machine per student at this point in time.
Yeah.
But their opportunity for work placement, some of them were helped out by some of the shop tours we went on. So we had a couple of tours through HRM. We were able to get into the city and go through a few shops. We were out to a couple of shops here in the Windsor area, outside of further down the highway from Kentville. And by getting into those shops, that gave some face time for our students, both first year and second year, to get in and see what what a true machine shop environment looks like, and all the shops were very different in what they were doing as far as their type of work and their approach. But it also gave the students, the learners, a chance to kind of see what was available for work out there, and there were some placements that actually resulted from these visits.
Excellent. With that work term, do you help students find their work term location, or is it the sole responsibility of the student?
Primarily, I would say it's the responsibility of the student. However, if they're having a problem finding somewheres, we as instructors would certainly reach out to our industry connections and find a spot that might be a good fit, and that could be based upon skill level, type of work that individual wants to get into. But we could certainly offer some assistance if it's required.
Absolutely. Patrick, someone's asking whether they can do the work term outside of Nova Scotia. Is that an option?
That's a good question. I believe so, yes. I'm pretty sure
Okay.
I came across a form the other day when I was handing out forms to my students for the student work term that there's an option for international, I believe. Now, I know that, I mean, international is different than, outside of the province,
Yeah,
but I don't see why that wouldn't be possible. Um, I think that's something we could look into and certainly get back to them on with a more concrete answer.
absolutely. Yeah, that's perfect. And we can touch base on that. Okay, so the college, we always say that we are connected to industry. And I think Patrick mentioned earlier, yes, you did, that you took this program and you were working in industry before actually coming to NSCC. So my question to you, do you keep relationships with folks from the industry that you came from, and adjust your teaching, maybe not your teaching style, but adjust the content of the program to reflect what students need?
Short answer, yes. um, I've only been in this role for a short period of time. I came in August and had a week to prepare and get set. In the short time I've been in here, I've had the ability to make even further connections, more connections than I had initially. When I graduated from school, I took two different 2-year courses and combined that and worked out in 3 years. I did my work term with the same company, and I spent the last 17 years with the same company that I did my work terms with. So I have a um, very narrow group of contacts at this point in time from that particular shop. However, I've made more contacts in the last few months from being in this role and being out to the shop tours, and I'm certainly interested in getting feedback from them, both on how students are making out in work terms and further, but also interested in what they see as the future for this particular trade, and how we can better prepare students or learners for what they expect to see in industry. There's the first 3 shops we got out to were 3 very different shops, very different. I'd say very different customer base that they're focusing on as far as who they're supplying parts for. Different styles of sorry, different types of customers in that some were strictly looking for research and development kind of work, which is very small batch. It could be as little as one type of part, and that could take many hours for one part. But the other shops that were focused on high volume production. Now, across these first 3 shops we toured, all of these shops had some form of automation happening. So there's one shop that had a large robot stuck in between 2 machines, and this robot had the capability of cameras picking up position of stock. We put the stock into the machines. The machines made the part completely. Both machines that were facing each other made both parts completely, 2 different parts I might add. And this robot was able to unload both of these parts and put them on a conveyor belt and send them out. So these parts were being put on the belt. These machines, the robot completed everything, and the parts came out. Now, it's still a machinist who programmed it, still a machinist who proved it all out. It's a machinist who integrated the robot. So those are all very desirable skills. All 3 of those individually, put them all together, and then that's someone who is a very sought after individual, being able to kind of do all of that. There are other shops that were integrating automation in a welding format. So it was a machine shop, but they also had a lot of fabrication happening as well. Um, so instead of a robot feeding parts, feeding thousands of parts to a couple of machines, this was a robot doing welding of a whole bunch of parts, bringing it all together under the supervision of another welder. And in the third shop, there is a robot doing much smaller volume placement of parts inside of the machine. But the automation is kind of a bit of a push that we're seeing from industry because we are experiencing the shortage in the trade force right now. And the automation is going to use the skills of these up and coming tradespeople to their advantage to help run more machinery to keep up with the demand of the customers. So,
Perfect.
short answer, yes, I'm working with industry to help keep the learnings of the students relevant to what they're going to experience when they get out into industry.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, ultimately, if your class, if your students aren't equipped to go into industry, it also doesn't look good on you. It doesn't look good on the students. It doesn't look good on you. It doesn't look, it's just a ricochet of bad news. Someone is asking what software technology is used for the CNC class. Are you able
Uh,
to
the
answer that?
yeah, the software that we're using this year is Mastercam 2023. Um, it is equipped. We've got the post processor that allows us to run our 5-axis machine behind me here. That allows us to do full simultaneous 5-axis. So Mastercam is a widely respected software in the industry, and it's one of the I'd say one of the most recognized. There's some other ones out there that are uh, might be more capable in some aspects, but I don't know. My experience has been with Mastercam as well, so it was an easy transition for me to come in and start teaching because of my familiarity with it.
Perfect. You also mentioned there's a shortage in the trades force. Now, is that with CNC machinists? So does that mean that employment opportunities are pretty good?
There are lots of employment opportunities. Um, we've got many of the places that we visited, many of the shops we visited. We're all looking for either people to come in for a work placement to kind of test drive and see how they work out, but also looking for or hiring for long-term employment as well. There's a lot of manufacturing happening in Nova Scotia, and the manufacturing happening in Nova Scotia, it's sometimes many weeks as far as lead time before people can get parts because the shops are backed up because they don't have enough people to run the machines, which leads us to the automation side of things. try to offer more throughput and getting parts put out, but they need people to be able to program and set them up and run them too. So
Yeah,
yeah, there's
yeah,
definitely shortage and there's definitely demand.
perfect. Excellent. So we'll keep things rolling. Talking about student success, I mean, we just talked about that, but graduates are in demand. Was there anything else to add to that? Sorry, I should have shifted the slide earlier.
Um, let me just check. Mm, I think we've pretty
Yeah,
much covered it. Now, I guess I could add to it that, I mean, being professional when you get out into the workforce, that shows a level of professionalism that employers or shop owners are definitely going to appreciate, and kind of taking the initiative and showing that you want to learn and being able to, dive into whatever task they offer you and make the best of it. It may not be a task that's fun, but you know everyone has to start somewhere, and you got to work from the ground up sometimes, right? So,
yeah.
taking the opportunity to learn, ask questions, and take interest in whatever job it might be you have, that can go a long way in showing an employer that you're driven and want to learn more.
Exactly. That's a very helpful hint for any industry that folks go into. Okay, so program fees for this program, we want to be as transparent as possible when it comes to the amount that is coming out of your pocket. Our program fees page, nscc.ca/program fees, breaks down the cost of every NSCC program. If it's a 1-year program, you have the cost for the 1 year, 2-year program, you have the cost for each year of study. It really is important to note these costs are estimates and really should be used for planning purposes, as some of the costs, the additional program costs, are estimates. This is so that you are making a well-rounded budget with a little bit of wiggle room to give you a better idea of what you could end up spending if you have to get a math set, different tools, a laptop, etc. It's also worth noting the costs that are on your screen right now reflect the current school year, which is 2023, 2024. The cost for the upcoming school year will be announced later in the spring. So tuition for the program, $3,620. There's not a lot of wiggle room with that. However, Patrick, can you talk a little bit about some of those additional program costs that a student may need to purchase? So like coveralls, uniform, etc.
I'm just going to take one moment to make sure I get, are the numbers you have up similar to the numbers from last year's webinar?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just going to, I'm working on a small screen here. I'm going to pull up a different screen so I can talk to it. So as far as like coveralls and, you certainly want to have some work clothes you're not afraid to get dirty. Some students might have a pair of coveralls that they may have worn from the first year, which would certainly be something worth wearing and having a pair of. As far as some of the tools go, there's likely going to be a number of tools that you have from last year's course as well, which really are going to carry right over into this. It's very, very similar. I think in last year's webinar, there was mention of some calipers that were coolant proof. I'm not sure how necessary those are. I know some of those can be kind of expensive depending on what brand you get into, but there's a lot of different tools that if you're coming from first year, you're definitely going to have from that first experience in the first year of school.
Would you recommend students come their first day with those tools or wait a little bit and then make that investment if needed?
There's certainly some shop tools that can be used until they decide what they want to purchase or get into. And sometimes, depending on how old the list is, how often it's revised, some of those tools and lists may not be necessary for the frequency of use. They would certainly be, you could certainly wait a little bit to pick up some of those tools.
Perfect. Awesome. Anything else to add there with any additional costs that students may?
Book-wise, I think there was, I think last year's book fee was noted as somewhere around $800 or $600.
Yep.
It's substantially less than that. I think I've got a textbook and a workbook to go along with it, and I went to the bookstore just before March break and checked in on it, and it was $210 taxes in for those two books.
Yeah.
I had a student come from New Brunswick last year who didn't have the engineering drawing book from first year, so he had to spend another $110 or $115 on that book, I think, and that was used in our GD&T course in first semester.
Perfect.
But other than that, those book-wise, those are the two courses. The CNC theory side has the text plus workbook, and then the GD&T has the engineering book from first year. Fortunately, there was some left over that he was able to purchase one, so it wasn't an issue.
Yeah, I think it's great that a lot of our programs and faculty are trying to keep the books as affordable as possible and using open source resources, etc., which is really great for students. Yeah. So while we are the most affordable post-secondary option in Nova Scotia, we certainly recognize that once you add up the tuition, the textbooks, the 1 to 2 textbooks in the program, your equipment, plus being a full-time program, you're likely not working full-time while you're studying, so you don't have that full-time income coming in. The cost of this program can certainly add up, plus balancing the cost of living. So one thing I want you all to do if you are coming into this program is apply for every single scholarship, bursary, award that you are eligible for, because at the end of the day, it is money in your pocket, not out of your pocket. So we offer over $3 million in scholarships, bursaries, and awards. Every single year, that pool of $3 million increases a little bit, and every single year there is money remaining because no one has applied for bits of that money. So please apply for everything. Most of these award opportunities are going to be based on financial need. Some are going to be based on your program, your career interests, the campus that you're attending, leadership, volunteer experience, work experience, as well as academic standing. We will be hosting a bunch of different how to apply for NSCC awards and scholarship webinars throughout the spring and throughout the year. So please keep that in mind and just apply to all these different financial opportunities. As we are wrapping things up, we'll talk a little bit about services and resources. Patrick, you had mentioned you have 16 students in your class this year? 6.
It's only 6 students, yeah.
Yeah, so it is quite a tight-knit group. And Patrick, is it fair to say that you get to know your students a little bit?
Very, very well. I'm actually their only instructor they've had this whole year. So I'm teaching everything, that whole schedule, that's all my schedule.
Yeah. So as far as support on campus, your instructor, with so many of our classes or programs being small, your instructor tends to be your first kind of point of contact. If you're not understanding something that's happening in your program, please connect with your instructor. They may notice that you're not picking up on the content. They may notice a shift in your behavior in the classroom, which is nice to have that familiarity with your faculty. In addition to that, though, every single student has a student services advisor. We have Indigenous supports. We have African Nova Scotian advisors and Indigenous advisors, accessibility services, disability services, personal counseling, career counseling, the whole kit and caboodle. At the end of the day, your well-being is the most important thing. And if there's something that is impacting your learning, we can help address it or help navigate and find folks in the community that can help you. Patrick, anything to add to that from your perspective?
You covered pretty much all of it. It's hard to add much more to that.
Yeah, perfect. If you are coming to NSCC, you will have a Get Started event, which goes through all of the services and resources that you have access to as well. I'm really pleased to announce that campus housing, so we are popping up campus housing at all of our locations. So currently Annapolis Valley, our COGS location, Truro campus, and our Strait Area campus have campus housing. But King's Tech is next in line to open up an on-campus housing space. Next year, our Akerley and Pictou campuses will open up, followed by Ivany and then King's Tech. So if this is a program that you are considering, but you are concerned about housing, please know that housing is on the way. When it comes to off-campus housing, our campus housing team can help with off-campus housing searches as well. Wrap things up, I just want to talk a little bit about how to apply. So there is no deadline to apply to NSCC as a domestic student. As an international student, April 1st is the deadline. Applying to NSCC, the cost is $40 for domestic students, $100 for international students. On that application, you can choose 2 programs or 2 campus locations, or simply 1 program if that's all that you're interested in. You are going to apply online at nscc.ca/apply. All of your admission related documents, so your transcripts showing completion of that precision machining program or completion of the marine engineering technician within the Canadian Armed Forces. There was another one in there as well. All of your admission related documents should be sent to documents@nscc.ca. Wait time for NSCC, about 4 weeks until you hear something back about your admission status. Admission offers at NSCC are based on your application date for qualified applicants. So the sooner you apply, the sooner you will hear back from us. Staying connected, so please follow us on our social media channels. You'll find everything you need to know about NSCC on there. We offer a lot of day in the life videos and stories. They can give you an inside look at what it's like to attend NSCC. I see a question coming in, so I will get to that. Patrick, before I read this question, any additional information to share to folks?
I really wasn't sure what a machinist did before I got into it. And it was after a couple of different tries at university, a few different things, that I got into this trade. And I spent 17 years in the same company, and I learned so much, and I loved it so much. One of my goals when I completed my program was to come back as an instructor, and that was right in my portfolio. The opportunity for me to come full circle and be back at the college teaching this program that I once learned from is just it feels like a bit of a privilege, and such a joy to be able to be in here and help pass along the information I've learned. I really appreciate the opportunity to share this both in this podcast or this webinar, but also with the school. It's a fantastic trade. If you're hands-on and you're eager to learn, there is so much to learn.
Yeah, I think that's such a beautiful story, is that you were a student, you did your work terms, you went to industry, and now you're back as the instructor. You're full circle now. So someone has asked how they can complete the precision machining. We offer that at NSCC. So I'll connect with you after the session and provide you with some information about that precision machining program.
Just to make a note, the other, the third manner in which you could get into this program, was the oh shoot.
The level one?
Yeah, level one. So getting into industry, there is an opportunity sometimes to work with a machine shop before you take the course, and then having that level of experience gives you a chance to get into the program as well. So yeah, it's the level one apprenticeship through Apprenticeship Nova Scotia, I guess.
Perfect. And if someone is currently doing their level one and they're working in industry as a level one apprentice, can they do their work term with that employer?
I would expect in most cases, yes. I think there's usually going to be a work term from the CNC side of things. You would likely need to be in a shop that's going to have CNC gear to some degree, and CNC gear can come in many ways. So CNC gear could be a plasma table, which is basically like a welding table that basically cuts things out, or it could be water jet, which is also CNC. But there's also industries that aren't necessarily a machine shop that use CNC gear as well, kind of like cabinet makers. They're people who are building kitchens. They're going to have CNC machines, CNC routers that cut the wood out. People who create granite countertops, they have CNC machines as well, or water cutting machines that are also running on the same kind of code. So it's not just machine shops that use CNC. It's many other different parts of the manufacturing industry that go beyond just metal and plastics.
Yeah, I had no idea all of this stuff existed. And now I see it everywhere. It's pretty incredible. Patrick, we have no more questions coming through. So thank you for sharing all of this information with everyone.
Well, thank you for including me. I love sharing what I know and being able to pass it on, and I love to see people get enthusiastic about this trade as much as I tend to be.
Yeah, incredibly informative. And thank you everyone who attended this session. It has been recorded, so if you do want to re-watch it, we will be posting that to our website probably by the end of the week, so you can re-watch it, gather more information if needed. But most importantly, thank you for spending your this last hour with us and asking us all your wonderful questions. Perfect. Well, that's it for now. Thanks, everyone. And we'll see you next time.
Thanks so much. See ya.